welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. I thank you so much for joining us here on the program. We are here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., and we are streaming live at those times at richarddugan.com. We're also on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. That's our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. We hope that you will join us for those broadcasts, whether it's on the radio or online. And you can also hear the entire interview, if you'd like, on a podcast. It's on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations across the internet. Just put in Tell Me Your Story, Richard Dugan, and looking for that podcast, and you'll find it, I guarantee you. Or you can just go to richarddugan.com, and all of the podcasts are listed there in the SoundCloud player. We are also on YouTube. Now you can listen to and watch these interviews. We hope that you will. And the channel is, of course, Tell Me Your Story, Richard Dugan. Just look for the guy with the black hat. We also ask that you participate in the Decade of Perfect Vision. Spend some time in that quiet, calm, still, peaceful place listening to that still, small voice. It's where you will get perfect vision for your life. I guarantee you, the still small voice will never steer you wrong. And if you can support the work that we're doing, you like what we're doing, and you'd like to be a part of it, we'd greatly appreciate any financial support you can give us. I have a PayPal account for your security as well as ours. And all you have to do is put my email address in when you're sending, richard@richarddugan.com. That's richard@richarddugan.com. We have a returning guest to our program today, and I'm excited to have him on the program because it's always interesting when we converse with a special guest. His name is David S. Heeren, and we thank him for joining us here on the program. It's a pleasure to have you back for, I believe this is your third visit to Tell Me Your Story.
I think it is, Richard. Just call me Dave.
Dave, I will do that. Dave,
Yeah,
it's nice to have you with us. And of course, the focus that we've had in the last few programs is similar to this one. The title of your latest work that is out and about, it's called What the Bible Has to Say About the U.S.A. First of all, let me ask you about much of what has been said over and I'll literally have to say the centuries, in regards to what the Bible says about. Because there are those who say that there is nothing in the Bible about the United States or the Revolutionary War or the Middle Ages or any of that, because all of this stuff has already happened, but we just don't understand how it's happened. In other words, they've put a different perspective on what we are all reading from the 66 books. There are others who say it's yet to happen, and there are others who say it's happening right now. And that, there are different characters, let's say in the book of Revelation, that make reference to the United States, they make reference to Russia and Israel, and it's all symbolic and on and on and on. And then there's even one who says that none of this is literal, that this is all metaphorical, it's all symbolic, it's all spiritual, it's all internal. I'm thinking that might be a good place to start as we start talking about your perspective as to where the United States shows up in the Old and or New Testament. So can you share with us a little bit of your perspective on what I've kind of alluded to in terms of which perspective is...
I think all of them are valid in certain circumstances. And I think it's the reader, student, with the guidance of the Holy Spirit to figure out which one it is. And if there is, in fact, any relevance. Now, what happened with me, I don't know if I shared with you about Isaiah 6:8. I was going along in the Bible and I got to Isaiah 6:8. The prophet hears the Lord, the triune God, speaking to among himself. And he's saying, well, whom shall we send? Who will go for us? We need somebody to go for us to do this thing. And Isaiah kind of shyly says, here am I, send me. Well, I did that. And then all of a sudden, I did start to understand some things, and a lot of things are spiritual. A lot of things in the Bible are indeed symbolic, and a lot of them cross over. In other words, some prophecies were about 70 AD when Jerusalem was destroyed, but also are about the end time when Jesus returns. And it makes it clear because it calls it the day of the Lord, which is the day when Jesus returns. But Hosea was a lot simpler. This was not complicated at all. And you can agree or not with what I say, but it's all literal because it's a comparison thing. I'm reading along in Hosea and I'm thinking, whoa, this is just exactly the way I would write something or read something about what was going on in the United States, because they had the same issues that we have. And the book actually has 10 chapters about these issues. And if you want, I can just mention them because they were happening in Israel. They were having the same problems. People are people.
Yeah.
And the Israelites were going through the same phases that the people of the United States had gone through. And these were their problem, because the Lord was about to pass judgment upon Israel and punish Israel because of its unfaithfulness to him. And the first one was money versus morality. A lot of times there's a choice. Well, or, are we going to be sleaze bags or are we going to make money? And in the United States, more and more and more you're seeing, even in churches, where the decision is made to be sleaze bags instead of to follow the Lord and to do what's right and or true. The second one, lawlessness. Boy, do we see lawlessness in the United States right now. And it was really terrible in Israel. Humanism. They didn't call it humanism then, but it amounts to the same thing where people decide they are better than God, or maybe there isn't any God. I am God. I am he. The humanist puts himself above everyone else or everything else. Fourth one is liberalism, and I don't want to get into the political side of it, but they had the same political issues then that we have now. I probably could have called it something else because that gets to say, well, what's wrong with liberalism? Well, I don't want to get into that right now.
Right.
The fifth one is globalism, where you have the view that the world is the thing, and I want to rule the world, or they have they don't care about their country.
Mm-hmm.
They have a global viewpoint. Some of them are traitors, and some of them are just don't care about their country. The sixth one is life versus convenience, and today that would be abortion and infanticide, euthanasia, even quite a bit now. You're seeing people that are committing suicide, and it's really a bad situation because, according to the Bible, life is created by God and therefore is to be valued and not to be treated like that, murdered,
Mm-hmm.
tossed aside.
Yeah. Let me ask you a sidebar question to that specific one. Would you put the issue of the death penalty in that same category? That these are still human beings. Yeah, they've done wrong, but God is the one who gave the life, so isn't it God's responsibility to take it when it's their time? And they'll deal with that at the day of judgment.
Well, in a lot of cases, very, very rarely is the death penalty enforced in this country. I think it's hardly ever anymore. So it's not even an issue here, other than the fact that God is perfect. His justice is perfect. And I just finished a study on that. His justice is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Bible, if you murder somebody, you're put to death.
Yeah.
If it's a first degree murder, if it's not incidental or accidental, it was the death penalty.
Right.
God's justice. And if you steal something, you have to pay it back yourself. You don't go to a court and have the judge say, well, I'll give you 30 days, but you can keep the $1 million. No, you had to give back the $1 million plus 30% more.
Right.
God's justice was pretty harsh.
Yeah.
But he always had in mind that word, justice. He wasn't trying to slur over things and go off on a tangent by ignoring the issue, by saying, well, keep the money, but we'll make you do community service for a while. No, God's justice is perfect.
Okay.
Does that
Let's
answer
continue
your
on
question?
with those issues that Israel was dealing with way back when.
Excuse me?
We were talking about,
Oh, okay, I can go on with the other ones.
yeah,
We're getting near the end. The New Age, which is, I don't even know if they call it that anymore, but there's a lot of religions out there that are wandering way far away from the original scriptures that have nothing to do with it at all. And God doesn't like that, because the scriptures, that's his book. He inspired the writing of the Bible. So anything that wanders away from that, he does not like. God's, I like this. This is the best one. God's love from A to Z, and it's right in the place in a book where you have the climax, about 2/3 of the way through.
mhm.
Chapter 8 of Hosea is about God's love. If you want, I can at some point read it, a paragraph or two from there, from that chapter, because it is a very beautiful statement of his love right in the middle of human behavior that he does not like at all. But he still loves us. And he has said that it is his will that all should be saved and come to the knowledge of the truth, meaning that the saving grace that would place us in heaven someday. So that's, I've only known one human being who really loved to an extraordinary extent, but I don't even think that she got it to that extent. It was shortly before my wife died. She told someone, and she meant it. She was smiling. She told someone she had had a terrible animosity with for years, "I love you," and I know she meant it. She was smiling, and the person she was talking to, actually, it was her daughter-in-law, came right immediately, recognized it, came right over and sat down next to her. It was beautiful.
Mm.
But God's love goes even beyond that.
Yeah.
Because these two had just had some human differences, but the people who we're describing here were, with the behavior that we're describing, is antagonistic to God, and yet he still says he loves us and he wants to save us and bring us to the knowledge of the truth. Now I'm preaching. Do you want me to finish with the last
That's
couple?
okay. Yes, go ahead. Let's go
Okay.
ahead and finish with the rest of them. Yes.
Yeah, I'm getting carried away here. Cunning commerce. That's number 9.
Mm-hmm.
What do we have that? people cheating each other, even stealing, identity theft. Now that's when I was growing up, we didn't have anything identity theft. Now we have theft of anything and everything. Cunning commerce, anything to make money and cheat. Chapter 10 is sexual license. According to the Lord's word, the only sex that he approves of is between husband and wife. And that's pretty narrow. He's pretty narrow-minded, but it's in the scripture.
Yeah.
Environmentalism, that gets into hairy areas, because some of the things they talk about are noble, but some of the things they're doing are not. Like, okay, you have a what's the word I want? An endangered species. Let's say it's a rodent that's on the endangered list. It's found in your yard. Well, they take your house away, and they do that. The APA will do that. It's a rodent, even a big bug. Oh, that's a rare bug. We got to take their house away because they might do something to kill that bug. Environmentalism has gone way out of bounds. It's no longer environmentalism when you're taking people's homes and making them homeless simply because something endangered species is found on their property. And that's it. That's the last one. And in some ways, that's the hardest one, because some of the principles that are, under the environmentalists' banner are good. It's just some of the things that they do are not.
Yeah. Well, I certainly can understand all of that, and we're going to continue our conversation talking about Dave's latest book, Dave Heeren, and what the Bible has to say about the USA here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I'm really glad that you're with us to listen to and hear about the different perspectives that we bring to this program, and I think that they're very valid. One of the interesting things, Dave, that that came to my mind as I was perusing the book and so forth, you talk about what the Bible says in Hosea in regards to Israel and the comparisons between where the United States is today. And you and I are both familiar with the common phrase we hear over and over again: if you do not learn from history, you are doomed to repeat it. And it seems as though, I don't care what your belief system is, what your philosophy is, we just absolutely, as a species, we just refuse
You know, like,
to listen.
Right.
Talk to us about that a little bit, and how we're going to get through to folks when it comes to where we are, the history that is behind us that we should be looking at. And I'm not saying in terms of looking at it in dread, but looking at it in terms of learning the lessons so that we can do something different this time.
I think it gets back to the attitude, um, and it's I had thoughts to trace it, but from the time I was growing up to the present, let's face it, um, people are proud. We're not humble. The Bible calls for humility. Well, I'm not humble all the time, maybe sometimes, but I don't know of anybody whose humility is perfect other than the Lord himself. And without that humility, we have the problem, not just of pride, but of self. And one of my favorite Christian teachers, now I'm trying to remember his name, but he is one of my favorites. Right now I'm all addled. But no, he said, give up the right to yourself to him. Well, people don't want to give up the right to themselves to anybody. I'm me, I have my own truth. That's a great one. That's a new one. I have my own truth. I can make my own truth. I can live my own truth. I can make it all up. Well, when you have that attitude, you're not going to learn anything because you're not open-minded. You have to have, first of all, an open mind, and a little bit of humility is required to do that. You have to be teachable. If you're not teachable, you're not going to learn anything. And a lot of what we're seeing around us now, we've got about 2 generations, or at least a generation and a half, that is not even teachable. And part of that is because they were brought up in an environment, not just a home environment, but also school environments that are very, very bad. They've been taught all kinds of junk. And as teachable as they are, with limits, what they've learned is not true. And so they really, unless they just have a complete conversion, a spiritual conversion, a humbling experience that really changed their life. The average person in the United States today, the average adult or teenager, is not really accountable at all, not teachable, not humble. It's all me, 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 me. And when you get that, you're not giving up the right to yourself at all. As it was, still not thinking of the guy's name. He was a British clergyman. But that's a profound thing, giving up the right to yourself to God. And just that's saying, well, you created me and I belong to you. No, people don't want to do that. No.
It's interesting that you bring that up because we have both in our founding documents of this country, but also specifically in the New Testament of the Bible, the Christian Bible, we have what some might consider to be a little bit of a paradox. And the paradox from our founding documents basically says that we have these inalienable rights, and among them are, when it says among them, it means that there's more than this, but here are three of them. We have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, it also says earlier, we the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice. We talked about God's justice. Ensure domestic tranquility. That'd be kind of nice, huh?
Good.
Promote the general welfare and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain, etc., etc. I find those last two to be only possible if you are a selfless human being.
Right.
However, then we have in the actual documents that we are governed by a First Amendment to the Constitution that says, and I paraphrase very loosely here, I can basically say and do whatever I want, whenever I want, however I want. I don't have to be concerned about anybody else because I have the constitutional right as an individual. I have those individual rights. Whereas the Bible basically says, no, it doesn't actually say it's God's way or the hell way or highway, if you wish, but more along the lines of, I just want to do God's will, okay? And I am going to consciously, willfully give up my will to follow God's will. Now, have I given up my individuality? Absolutely not, because I made the choice. I made it consciously, volitionally, with forethought, etc., etc. Do you think that our founding documents have that paradox, and that's part of where the problem is that people have been focusing more on those amendments to bear arms, to freedom of speech, to all of the other things they say that we as individuals have a right to, and forgetting all about, even though they're not legally binding, the preamble to that document that says we're supposed to take care of one another so that there's a future for our children and their children and their children.
And you just hit it. Oswald Chambers' comment: give up the right to yourself to him. Try to obey him, to live lives that would please him. But you know, there are in the well, you mentioned, and there are some constitutional rights, but there are some things that are not in there, that are being put in there by people who want them in there, but are not in there at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the big problem is, because they're making things up and they're saying, well, I have the right to do this. Well, I have the right to murder my baby. No, you don't. Well, speaking now as if I were a woman, I'm just taking care of my own body here. I have a right over my own body, but no, you're not. What you're doing is you're killing another being. And the Bible does not say that you can kill another being. And it doesn't even say that you have the right to your own body. It does say that you have certain rights, but you should give them up to the Lord. And if you do that, your life is going to work out fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I did have another thought. Go ahead, and I'll think about it while you're talking.
All right, David Heeren is my guest. What the Bible has to say about the U.S.A. I'm Richard Dugan. This is Tell Me Your Story. We're giving you new paradigms for a new world here as we give you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And that's kind of what we've been talking about here, David. Dave, we're talking about making choices here. We're talking about the focus of our choices. And I know that because I spent a lot of time over 15 years back in the 80s and early 90s around Christians, some of who were very devout, very committed, very devoted to their faith, to their God, to their Savior, and so forth. And I would never belittle them in any way, shape, or form. They have the right to believe what they choose to believe. And I'm not saying, and they have a right to be wrong too. No, I don't know that I'm right with where I'm at. And plus the fact, as I shared with my late sister, my beliefs of yesterday are not my beliefs of today, are not my beliefs of tomorrow, because I'm still alive. I'm still growing. I'm still questioning and asking questions and curious. I'm still experiencing what's going on. And I'm learning a lot. And hopefully every day I learn something new. As some people would say, if you can go to bed, lay your head down and say you learned something new today, you're doing pretty good, you know. But it is about choices. And I want to take it out of the religious realm, if you will, as well, and bring it more in also into the secular realm in terms of talking about it regarding our fellow human beings. When this whole business in Ukraine blew up, if you will, pardon the pun, the first thought that went through my mind was I need a plane ticket to Moscow. I need to go to the Kremlin and I need to grab that little nutball by the ear and say, "Nuh-uh, we don't play this way anymore. This is the 21st century. We're moving on to a new way of doing things, and you get a permanent timeout." And I'm not saying we kill him, okay? Do not get me wrong there. He can be put in prison for all I care, but you don't kill him. You let him live out his life. His death is up to God. His departure from this world is God's, that's up to God. But this is not the way we do things now. I'm sorry. But I just don't, this doesn't make any sense. And I've even heard people starting to blame the Ukrainians for things they did that justifies Putin's doing what he's done. I was like, you have got to be kidding me. This is crazy. But let me get back to what we're talking about here in terms of making choices. We all make them. The biggest question is, what choices are we making and where are we getting our, shall we say, our information from? And I'll go back to what I said at the beginning of the program, about the decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, and listening to that still small voice. Do you believe that that is where we should be getting our guidance for making the choices in our lives that we do make?
Well, I do believe that in my case, I think it's the Bible, but there is a practical element, and you want to talk about that side of it. I think that we are gifted by God with innate wisdom to make choices. And I think a lot of times in my own history, I'm a pretty rock-headed guy and I wanted my own way. And I still am like that. I haven't given up my right to myself to him, like Oswald Chambers says. Well, I do try to do that every day. And then I do try to live that way. But not being perfect, I don't always succeed. The problem I see is so many people who have just turned their backs and said, I don't give a hoot. I'm just going to go and do my own thing, and I'm going to be me, and I don't care about you. I don't care what the heck happens to you because I'm me. And I don't, that's a choice that's made by a lot of individuals right now, and that's just wrong as far as I'm concerned. We have responsibility for each other. Not that I'm to blame for somebody else's faults, but maybe I can help him get past that, or her get past that, or maybe he can help me get past my problems. And one of the great things in my life was just before Joan died, when she expressed love for her daughter-in-law. It was a choice she made to say, well, I don't care what's happened to me. I'm just gonna love this person. I'm just gonna make this choice. And that was a beautiful choice. And we have the opportunity to make choices to love people. And we certainly don't see that with Russia and invading Ukraine. And I was a journalist, okay? And I know for a fact, because I heard them say it, that once they were excluded from litigation, from lawsuits, that they were going to just say anything they felt like. They were going to lie. They were going to lie if it forwarded their political positions. And I do know them. And unfortunately, the people in the highest journalism positions are liars. President Trump was kind. He just said that they had fake news. Well, it wasn't fake news, it was lies. And they said they were going to. And that really made me angry, because I was a journalist for 50 years and I watched it develop, and I saw them come out of journalism school liars. And it really got me angry, because they're not reporting the news at all. They're just reporting lies. And a lot of people are believing the lies. And this is a very evil thing as far as I'm concerned.
Well, but we also have people who are not in journalism, but who are in elected positions. They're also lying. And this is one of the other problems we've got. You've got, if you do have a journalistic group that are lying, and then you have politicians that are lying, and you have educational institutions and medical institutions and financial institutions that are all lying, then who are you supposed to believe? And that's why I've always encouraged people to turn to that still small voice, not for answers to those kinds of questions about finance and religion and education and politics and so forth, but about how to go about living their lives, because there's nothing I can do about those people who are lying in those different arenas.
We can ignore them and not watch them, and then they will go away.
That would be nice, wouldn't it?
Because no, they will, because the TV journalists depend upon the income from the people who are watching. That's just the way the world is. If you can get a whole bunch of people following you and watching you, et cetera, like Amazon.com, millions of people participate in their programs as sales, and it's not a bad thing. But the point is that and I really like what you're saying about the still small voice, because there is something inside of you that will kind of poke at you if you sense there is something wrong.
Yeah,
I certainly sense, and I don't remember everything way back then, but I don't think I was. Well, I know I wasn't reading the Bible much then, and I doubt if I was even a Christian. Although I went to church sometimes, or a lot of the time, but that didn't mean much, because Billy Graham has said less than 50% of the people who go to church are actually Christians. So that doesn't really mean that much. But God, I do believe, has given to us a spirit that is sensitive to know intuitively when we're being lied to, if we're really trying to figure it out and not just nodding our heads and say, yeah, I like that because they're, yeah. No, there's something inside, like you're talking about. There is something inside of us that will kind of prod us if we are at least open to what it is saying to us, because we do have that inner spirit that will lead us in the right direction.
We're talking with Dave Heeren, and his latest book is What the Bible Has to Say About the U.S.A. I'm Richard Dugan. You are listening to Tell Me Your Story. New paradigms for a new world. We're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We're here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., and Wednesdays at 9 a.m. with our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. And we stream live at those times at richarddugan.com. The podcasts are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, other locations all across the internet. And we certainly hope that you will avail yourself of the podcast and subscribe as well. You can also go to YouTube and watch these interviews on a video called Tell Me Your Story. And the channel is Tell Me Your Story Richard Dugan. We hope that you'll do that as well as support us if you can. We would greatly appreciate any support you can give us to keep this program moving forward. I guarantee you there will never, ever come a day that I will ever come to you and say, and if you don't support, we won't be here. No, 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 no. That is not a game I'm going to play. I heard too much of that, David, during the 70s, 80s, and 90s when I was working for Christian radio. And I said, if I ever got my own radio show, I'd never play that game. That is to me, that is a lie. That is, oh, that's awful. Anyway, and also we ask you to spend some time going within and listening to that still. I heard from my still small voice saying that very thing. Do not do that. That is not right. If you are not able to make it happen, then don't do it. Move on to something else, and I'll guide you.
Try to coerce somebody else to do something,
Yeah.
just to make you wealthy.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, sure. Would I like a console with gold-plated knobs? No. Believe it or not, no. Just keep it simple. Keep it simple. All right, we're talking here with Dave and Dave Heeren, and I've always found it fascinating in my conversations with you in terms of the perspective that you come to. Obviously, the biblical perspective, Christian perspective, a perspective of faith. Now, here's the interesting thing, though. Would you say that the United States, again, using the parallel with Israel from the book of Hosea in the Old Testament, would you say that whereabouts are we, shall we say, on that spectrum where we either have passed the point of no return or we still have a chance to turn this thing around, this, as they call it, the great American experiment? That's what it's been referred to as, an experiment.
Well, as to whether we have passed it or not, I don't know. That I really believe that's God's decision. But my personal opinion is, until we have, gone into captivity like the Israelites, we're God's people. And I believe that the United States, being founded as a nation under God, with all 50 states naming God in their documents, is also an under God country. But I believe that, like Israel, we have gone the other way. And when they finally got to the place where there was no turning back, they wound up in Babylon. And they did not like it in Babylon, but that was God's judgment upon them. That was his punishment. Okay, if you are not going to be faithful to me and obedient to my word in my kingdom, which is where you have been placed, then you're going to have to go to somebody else's kingdom for a while, and you're not going to like it. I don't think I'm answering your question completely, but because I'm keeping that perspective, which I think is the real perspective here, that we have gone about as far low as the Israelites did. And the only thing left is whether we will soon, and it probably could come soon because we've gone so far down, experience the same judgment that they did. And that was not fun. But it looks as if that's going to happen. You can see it all around us. More and more and more, we're being dictated to as if right now we had a Hitler in the White House. Well, you have to wear a mask. You're not allowed to buy that medicine. You have to buy this medicine. You absolutely have to get an inoculation, even though it doesn't do any good. You have to get it. This is the kind of tyranny that people like Hitler and Stalin put upon their people, the people in not just in Germany, but practically all of Europe.
So you don't think that falls under the category of promoting the general welfare and securing the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity?
No, I would say that it definitely does not.
So
well for our
what
posterity.
then what are we supposed to do? I mean, if we've got a contagion in this case that is spreading across the globe, and they call a pandemic and so forth.
Oh, you're talking about COVID now, right?
Well, sure, yeah, or
Okay.
any other virus. I mean, we've had the all kinds of different flus that started. We have the influenza that travels the globe and seems to come around to our doorstep in the United States around November, December, January, every winter. And we don't, and of course we did come up with the flu shots. I haven't had a flu shot in decades,
Either
and I
way.
haven't had the flu in decades.
Yeah.
Uh, Maybe I don't hang around the right people to
But
catch it.
you haven't been put in jail for not getting a shot. A lot of people are getting either put in jail or fired from their jobs because they have not got a COVID shot. And you're right, it's nothing but a virus. And now they're finding out that the stuff that they're selling that's supposed to be helpful is not. Like the masks, for instance,
Mhm.
they're not helpful at all in preventing the virus. People just as many people wearing masks get it as people who don't. And besides that, the masks can be harmful to the immune system.
Mhm.
The whole thing is just a political nightmare, and it was created in China for that particular reason. We now know it was created in a lab in China and dispersed from there for particular purposes, and it's been utilized for those political purposes. And it's a very dangerous scenario we're in now because we are in a place where a Hitler could emerge. We got one in the White House, for Pete's sakes. Only he doesn't have a brain in his head, so he could never be a Hitler because he doesn't know how. But
Hmm.
he's acting like one. He said, "You have to do this. I'm not going to let you have this medicine for this virus because not because it doesn't work, but because I didn't collect any money for it." Um, you know, and we got a guy on TV who's a millionaire now because of his investments in the things that he's been lying about, continuing to do. Um, so what is being called a pandemic has become a political pandemic, even though the virus itself is really no different from any other virus. It's not harmful unless you know. Well,
So,
anyway,
yeah.
it's a very bad situation.
Final question on this subject, and we'll move on. Do you think then that this was a global conspiracy?
I don't know if it's global, but I know that the Chinese communists were involved in it because it furthers their aims to rule the world. If they can make all these other nations collapse, then they can rule.
Hmm.
And if these other nations have leaders who are pretending to be dictators and think they can be dictators, they're only fooling themselves because somebody bigger than themselves is going to come along. And this always happens. This always happens. Historically, somebody comes along who's a little guy and he thinks he's going to be the king of the block. Well, somebody else will come along who's going to be the king of the world. So this is only a temporal thing, but it is true that if nations can be caused to lose their financial stability, to lose their uh, uh, freedoms because of their own uh, leadership is becoming tyrannical, then the really bad guys can move in. This happened with Stalin in Europe. Lenin and Stalin, they practically were given it. I mean, they didn't even have to fight wars to get where they were, but they were ready for it, and they were very oppressive. They killed people by the millions.
Hmm.
Um, that's the situation where we are now. We're in danger of becoming just like the Europe that was dominated by communism for many years.
So it sounds like we've learned nothing from history. And it sounds also like we're not going to learn anything from history. And we'll just repeat the same things again and again and again. And there'll be no end to it until there's an end,
I
until
would
there's
say
an end
that
to
that's
us.
the case, except that um, the Bible does say some things that are interesting. about God's justice. And it also has some prophecies that seem to indicate there will be a revival. Jesus himself said that he was going to shorten the period of tribulation and that we should not worry about it. I'm not trying to be a scaremonger here. He actually went so far as to say, don't even worry about it. He said, if you have trouble, if you get arrested and sent to a communist concentration camp and they send you up in front of a judge, I'll show you what to say. Don't worry about it. And even if they persecute you, don't worry about it, because, and this was one of the great points in the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes. And in two of the Beatitudes, he talks about people who are being persecuted for his sake, for the Lord's sake, actually being blessed in the kingdom of heaven. And that's going to be a longer lasting kingdom than this one. That's going to go on forever. At least that's the way the Bible reads, that his kingdom is forever. And so why should we get ourselves too worked up? And I am worked up, okay? But why should we get ourselves too worked up over what's going on here, at least as far as our own future is concerned? Because if we're in the right place with him, we're going to be in the right place forever. And I'm sorry, I kind of wandered off into the spiritual side, but he did say, Jesus did say that, well, the scripture says that he became sin for us, who knew no sin, so that we could become the righteousness of God. Now that's profound. He suffered for us so that we could live forever. I mean, that's unbelievable. And all the rest of the stuff is just, it's just sidelights. And I got to remind myself of that sometimes, because I get upset about this stuff, and really I shouldn't.
Yeah. Well, you're not alone. If I choose to think about it or watch any news or programs about it, yeah, I tend to get a little up on the upset side too. So I try not to think about it or watch any news programs or television about it, because it's not doing me any good. It's hurting me and my physical, mental, emotional, and even spiritual health. And that's something that I have learned over the years is that it's just not going to do me any good. And it doesn't do me any good to hold any grudges, to try to get revenge for somebody who I think may have wronged me, and those kinds of things.
I stopped watching 40 years ago.
Yeah, well, I applaud you for your stopping. I haven't yet.
Well, that's because I knew them, and I didn't want to see them. I knew them because I was working beside them, and I knew them.
Yeah, well, I watch cartoons, okay? I watch cartoons. I go in knowing they're stupid. I know it. I was born and raised on Warner Brothers and so forth, and I like to laugh. So I watch cartoons,
I like comedy shows, like Step by Step. I love Step by Step. Boy, was that
I love the old Bob Newhart and the Mary Tyler Moore and the old Carol Burnett's. I love watching the Johnny Carson show. The old ones with of course the Tonight Show, I should say, with Johnny.
He was. What was the name of the guy who Ed McMahon set him up really well?
Oh, beautiful! They were a great team, and so those are the kinds of things that I like to fill my mind with, especially at night. If we have been watching something else with a lot of high drama, it's almost as if I need. You know how you sometimes you'll have a little cracker or something after you have, let's say you're at a wine tasting and you want to clear the palate. Well, I'm clearing my palate, my mental palate, with cartoons. We're talking with David Heeren. His latest work is What the Bible Has to Say About the U.S.A. It's the Old Testament speaks to Americans today. But David, the biggest question in that regard is, are Americans listening?
Well, some are. I see this when I go to church on Sundays. Some people are coming around, but most of them, no. Most of them are not. Each person has a chance to make choices. Even that girl in that high school thing just recently, where guy came in, and I don't remember whether it was a student or not, but I heard about it because I wasn't watching TV news. but he came in, he was shooting people, and he said to this girl, are you a Christian? And she said, yeah. And she said, well, if you'll renounce your faith, I'll let you go. And she said, I can't do that. Boom, he shot her to death.
Mm.
But that happened also in that Colorado incident years ago. So this is
Yeah.
not a new thing. But I know where this girl is going to wind up. She's going to be in heaven forever.
Yeah.
So God will take care of her. And you know, that to me, that's an absolute. God will take care of it. He will make all things right.
Well, I have to tell you that I myself, and I've been sharing this on the programs of late because it's part of my life and it's part of what I share on my program. I just experienced the loss of my eldest sister. She was only, it's funny that people will say this, oh, she was so young. She was only 65 years of age. And yet I have not experienced the downsides, the crying and the that kind of thing. And that's just where I'm at because of my perspective that I know where at least I believe I know where she is, okay? I also know that she's listening, that she's watching over both me and my other brother and sisters and my parents and so forth and her friends and what have you. And there's absolutely great comfort in that for me that, again, it's what I believe. I don't know it because I'm not there, but I choose to believe that because it eases my mind in that respect. Because there are those who believe that when this life is over, it's lights out. And it's like, well, and if it is lights out, you're never going to know it. Well, because lights are out.
Right.
So it's one of those things where I sit here and I watch what's going on around us as little as I can, like you. And I don't necessarily need the news to tell me of man's inhumanity to man because I know what's going on because of man, and he hasn't grown. He just has not moved out of the cave. Still has to play the silly games of control and power and manipulation and all of those other things. And I'd like to see us as a species move beyond that, but I know it's going to take an awful lot. So I appreciate the work that you are doing through your area to talk to people about this through this particular work, as well as I'm sure others. What the Bible has to say about the USA, the Old Testament speaks to Americans today. And just want to let you folks know that you can go to a website called End Times, plural, endtimesmystery.com. Kind of like daylight saving time. There's no S on saving. In this case, there is on time. It's endtimesmystery.com that you can find out more about what the Bible has to say about the USA. The Old Testament speaks to Americans today, and it is basically available through your website as well as Amazon and many of the other outlets. And a very popular book as well. If I'm not mistaken, Dave, it's won some significant awards.
Well, it did get some commendations. I've had a very good fortune with my writings. I've only written 18 books. Some people have written a lot more than that, but 2 of them got double 4-star ratings, which is perfect from Online Book Club. And I was surprised, and this, I hope I'm not bragging now, but I recently got word that I was accepted for admission to Who's Who. And I said, well, who's me? Somebody must have nominated me. So, that's pretty heady stuff. It's
Yeah.
Lord, forgive me if I'm bragging, but I'm really happy about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are very glad that that you're having the success that you are, because I will tell you that it is not the philosophy that you happen to follow, the faith that you have per se. It's the contribution that you make to humanity through what you are doing and why you are doing it that is going to make the kind of difference that we both hope, I think, will change the world. We want to change the world, even though I will acknowledge this world is not our home. This is not our final, I don't want to say resting place. This just isn't. This is just where we are right now. And we need to do everything we can to make it a better place. In some instances, it's not a horrible place. Maybe not for us here in America to some degree, but be that as it may, there's always room for improvement. And so I thank you for working on your end of the deal to bring about some improvement.
Well, I like what you said about your gut feeling, because I can really relate to that. I really believe that I believe that the Lord probably touched you in some way to give you comfort when your sister died, because that's a hard thing. It was a hard thing when my wife died,
Yeah.
and he said, "Well, why don't you join the choir?" And I said, "Well, I can't sing." So I joined the choir, and 2 weeks later, my voice was singing.
Wow.
And I said, "Well, how can, I can't do this." And so, the Lord or whoever or whatever,
Yeah.
if you don't believe God did it, but my voice went down an octave when I joined that choir, because the guy who the music director said, "Well, he didn't have any basses or many basses." I said, "You're a bass." I said, "No, I'm not a bass." He said, "You're a bass." So little things that are just so unforgettable. I mean, it was really a definite experience, and
Hmm.
wow, all I can say is wow.
Well, I'll tell you what, singing makes a big difference in one's life.
It does.
I can attest to that. Not only just the singing, but I will also tell you too that I now have one song under my belt, my first song that I have written, and that is quite cathartic as well because
Wow.
of the way that I was taught to write from the heart, from what's happening in my life at that given moment, and so yeah, music is so powerful. It can really change your life because of the music that you listen to, the music that you create. In your case, especially joining the choir and working with all of those other people in unison, isn't that? I mean, that's wow. Now that is what I call a
just
spiritual experience right
just
there.
yesterday, I joined after Joan died. That was a couple of years ago. Just yesterday, something happened that I had never seen before in church, and I've been going to church for a long time. Never saw this before. We were singing a song called "It Is Finished," it's about the crucifixion of Christ,
Mm-hmm.
and it was so powerful. It was the choir singing,
Yeah.
and in the middle of the song, not at the end, we didn't get a standing ovation at the end. People stood up in the middle. It, it blew my mind. It really got to me.
Yeah.
People
Still does.
stand all over. I mean, this was hundreds of people in the middle of a song.
I had the great pleasure of singing my song at a retirement home about a week or two ago, and afterwards, people would come up and first they would compliment the song, the words that I had written, and then they would compliment me on my singing, my voice, and and I do my utmost to stay humble in that regard and recognize that what they're hearing is what they're hearing, and that I am not to pass judgment on what's going out, but just to do the best I can with what's going out, and let the listener make up their own mind. And so yeah, sometimes you will touch people, and sometimes you will touch yourself, and they'll touch you back. And see, that's the other thing about being up in front of a group of people, Dave, is you're putting that out there to them. And then what happened was they gave it right back to you. And that is real love. That really is. That's that unconditional love.
That's what it was. It was.
Wow.
I never saw that before. I've seen people jump up at the end, But even that's not, even that's rare in the church, that
Yeah.
people will stand in ovation at the end, but in the middle,
Yeah.
and then standing for the whole song. I
Yeah.
mean,
That's cool.
oh,
That is,
man.
that is very cool. We're talking with David Heeren, and his book is the latest book he has now, award winning in that as well. What the Bible has to say about the USA, the Old Testament speaks to Americans today. And this is Tell Me Your Story. I am Richard Dugan, your host, and I thank you so much for being with us here on the program as we basically start to come to the end of what has been, from my perspective, David, I hope yours as well, a very interesting conversation about maybe on the one level, what we as Americans have been through by comparison to the Israelites way back when. And if we don't get our act together here pretty soon, what we can expect down the road. Very, very interesting. To learn from history is so important. To learn from history is so important, and I hope more Americans will hear what you have to say and start to open their eyes and start to do the things that they're being called to do. So, David, thank you so much.
Richard, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I have those three questions. I've asked you before. Sometimes the answers change, and I'd like to ask those of you again, if you don't mind.
Oh, yeah.
But before I do, I'm going to let you know that we're here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., streaming live at those times at richarddugan.com, with the podcast at SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, and iHeart and Amazon Music and many other locations. You can watch these interviews on the YouTube channel, Tell Me Your Story. And we certainly hope that you'll subscribe as well and maybe pass the link on to others if you find these interviews interesting. And then we also ask if you can spend time in that still, quiet, peaceful place, that closet, if you will, that inner space that is, it's a safe place, okay? Here's the beautiful thing, folks, nobody else can get there but you. That's how safe it is. No one can get there. And listen to that still small voice. And also support us if you can financially through PayPal. We have links on the webpage, the homepage of richarddugan.com, where you can click on it and support us financially if you can. We'll take energetic support as well. And we thank you, thank you, thank you for supporting us in the past and in the future. And with that, we now go to our guest who has been with us now for the third time. And actually, it's kind of nice to have him. He's a good friend, I think, that we've made here. Author of What the Bible Has to Say About the USA, David Heeren. So what we're going to do here is ask those three questions of you. And the first of those three, of course, is who is David S. Heeren?
Okay, I didn't hear that.
The question being, who is David S. Heeren?
Well, he's changing. I thought after Joan died that I was just going to fade out and go away. I am a servant of the Most High God, and sometimes I'm not a very good one, but I am a servant of the Most High God.
What is it that you hope to or want to achieve through the work that you are doing now?
I hope to encourage people, especially Americans, not to be afraid of what's ahead, even though it looks like it's going to be tough, but to be strong and courageous. Jesus said to stand firm, to trust Him. But even if you don't trust Him, you can still stand firm. And when somebody's tyrannizing you, just don't give in. Don't give up. Be strong and courageous. Believe, because it's only according to the scriptures going to be 3.5 years, and compared with what's happened in the U.S.A. and some other places, it's been a lot longer than that. So I would encourage people, keep heart, keep heart, keep positive, and don't get depressed.
And our final question, what is your life's purpose?
Well, that was related to question number one. So I try to do what God's will. And sometimes he kind of steers me without my listening so much, like he just kind of pokes me along. But other times I am conscious of a decision, and I try to make the one that will be the most helpful to his kingdom, to the people around me, even to the people who are not believers, because he loves people. He created us and he loves us. He loved us all. He loves us all equally. There is, some people are in religion where they are sort of like, they consider themselves, well, I'm kind of better than them. And I'm well aware of a couple of those, and some of them are not very nice. They're spawning all kinds of horrors in places like Africa and Asia.
Yeah.
So I feel a responsibility to do the will of God as it's written in the Bible. And if I'm doing that, then I think that that is what I should be doing, even though I know that I don't always do it very well. But in that situation, I think to be doing something is better than to be doing nothing. So if I can be doing something that is good, something that is biblical and God's will, then that is a positive, even though I fall far short of the glory of God.
Well, Dave, I thank you again for joining us here on the program. It's always fun talking with you and sharing the information that you have written down in the books that you have written and the life that you have lived. And we hope to have you back again when you have another release.
A couple of novels coming up.
Well, then we'll have you back on then. Looking forward to it. All right.
One more nonfiction and then 2 novels.
All right. Well, and I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, as we are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And we hope that you will join us for our next broadcast, podcast, videocast. And until then, love to Lal and Jeanette. I'll be listening.